All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm here to announce that today, Connecticut has sued the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and their acting heads to stop this cruel and pointless attack on Connecticut's universities and colleges, both public and private. Connecticut joined today at 11 a.m. in suing the Trump administration with 17 other states and an 18-state coalition in federal court in Massachusetts. It's being led in part by my office and Special Counsel for Civil Rights, Josh Perry, over here. And I want to thank, in particular, all of our state colleges and universities, but also the University of Connecticut, CSCU, and our state-run public colleges and universities. Marco Jakian is here today to speak about the impact on CSCU and Yale, all three of whom are part of our lawsuit and have submitted declarations and are part of the facts and the pleadings before the court. I want to thank the governor also and the lieutenant governor and many others for their commitment and leadership on this issue. This is an extraordinarily important case. And it is nothing less than an attack directly on Connecticut and our institutions of higher education and on students and on teachers and staff and administrators. Just to give you an example, we're talking about thousands of students across Connecticut, international students who are getting ready for school right now. We're talking about colleges and universities. This isn't just a last-minute attack. You know, this isn't just going to happen next month or the month after. It's happening right now. Colleges and universities are preparing their plans to open right now. And it's hard enough in the middle of a public health emergency and a global pandemic to make those plans. But to launch this attack in the middle of those in-motion preparations for the school year is utterly cruel and pointless. When you think about UConn, you're talking about 13% or more of their student body are international students who we rely on for their scholarship, their academic and athletic contributions, and not to put too fine a point on it, the fact that they pay tuition, most of them full pay, out of state, full boat tuition at our state's colleges and universities. And so what the Trump administration is proposing to do today is to cut UConn and our state colleges and universities and private colleges and universities off at the knees, literally, as the school year happens upon us. And the governor is going to talk shortly about the incredible damage this will do to our state's economy that depends so much, not just on international students, but the international students that become workers and who help power our economy. Before I turn it over to Marco Jakian, the president of Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, let me also say, as a legal matter, we are opposing the president's action because what he's done is he's blown through all the regulatory requirements of passing this rule. And he's just by fiat deciding he's going to blow up higher education for the fall. And the legal standard, when you analyze a move like this, is whether it's reasonable. It's patently unreasonable, but whether the action taken by the president and ICE and DHS is arbitrary and capricious. I can think of nothing more arbitrary and capricious than in the middle of the summer launching this midnight attack on Connecticut's colleges and universities without any consideration, and this is why it's arbitrary and capricious, without any consideration of the cost, of the plans, of the impact on these institutions, on students, teachers, staff, administrators, on their lives, on the cities and towns in Connecticut that depend on these students and these communities for our economic lifeblood in this state. And so that's why tomorrow morning, Connecticut will be in federal court seeking a preliminary injunction in Massachusetts, and we are going to fight this tooth and nail. This cannot happen for the students and for the colleges and universities that are so important and critical to our state. So with that, let me turn it over to Marco Jakian, who has a few words on behalf of CSCU.
Thank you, William, and good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. I was just saying earlier to the governor, it's nice to be out of the house and not doing something on Zoom. But Connecticut State Colleges and Universities is proud to sign on to this important lawsuit and to stand up for our international students in the face of yet another regulation aimed at attacking immigrants and immigrant students. You know, the idea that if an institution moves to online-only education, leaves the dorms open, that international students would be evicted from their housing, taken away from their fellow students, and forced to finish the semester from their home country, whether they may or may not have the infrastructure or the resources to complete, is antithetical to the mission of higher education. And as the Attorney General said, the fact that the administration took this action during the middle of a pandemic, using a national health emergency to further alienate people they define as other, is an abhorrent betrayal of the role of government. You know, international students are part of our fabric in our institutions, in our communities, and in our states. They make our colleges and universities stronger. Many of them remain, raise their families, make their homes here in the state of Connecticut. I'm proud to stand here and fight on their behalf. And we are very fortunate to live in a state led by a governor and a lieutenant governor that stands strong against this wrong-headed, cowardly, and illegal action by the federal administration. As the Attorney General just said, we are now, all institutions of higher education are preparing their plans to reopen. And they all need to be submitted and ready to go by August 1st. Under the governor's leadership, we adopted a reopen plan that is a model for the rest of the country. And it is based on science and data and guided by public health protocol. We take very seriously opening up our institutions for educational opportunities for all of our students, whether that modality is hybrid, in person, or totally online. And this is just wrong, this is not fair, and it's another matter of bias by the Trump administration. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll turn over to Lieutenant Governor Susan Beisler.
Thank you so much, Mr. Attorney General and Marco Jakian. We're here today because we believe that this proposed policy is not only racist and cruel, but it'll put the lives of countless students and the operation of our colleges and universities into uncertainty and chaos. The president's stated purpose for this policy is to protect American jobs. And in reality, this ill-advised and xenophobic policy will actually kill Connecticut jobs. Here's how it would do this. Right now in our state, we have over 10,000 international students in our state that make up about 5% of all of our college students. And the Center for the New American Economy said that in 2015, $397 million came from international students to support our economy. And those students also supported over 4,000 jobs in Connecticut. I think about my hometown of Middletown, where 15% of Wesleyan students, or more than 700 students, are international. Think about the support they give to our city's 50,000 people. They support our economy in Middletown, just as international students support our economy in our state. And nationally, international students were $30.5 billion worth of economic support and also supported 370,000 of our jobs. And we know, too, in our state, what incredible contributions immigrants have made to our state and to our country. Here in Connecticut, almost 500,000 people in our state were born abroad. 36,000 businesses are owned by immigrants in our state, and 73,000 people in our state work at firms owned by immigrants. So I'm just going to leave you with some examples of people who created very successful companies or did remarkable things for our state and our country. And I say that because we're joined by future leaders from the University of Connecticut and Wesleyan and other colleges who are the future Igor Sikorskys, Alexander Graham Bell, Andrew Carnegie, Niels Bohr, Albert Einstein, Max Planck, to name just a few people who came as immigrants and did incredible things for our country. So I hope that our Attorney General's lawsuit is successful for the sake of our students and our economy in our great state. Thank you so much, and I'll introduce Governor Ned Lamont.
Thanks, Susan. Look, William Tong has told us why the president's action is illegal, and OJ has reminded us why it's immoral. And I'd like to say, just as a governor and a former business guy, why it's just insane what we're doing right now. You know, Susan mentioned just the start of how important immigrants are to our state and our country. You know, in the middle of this COVID crisis, I've seen the nurses, I've seen the doctors, I've seen the scientists, I see the role that immigrants have played in pushing back on COVID. You know, Susan mentioned Igor Sikorsky. I mean, imagine, you know, we put a halt on H-1B visas. When the president is putting up this wall, it's not just a wall, you know, to keep people across the Rio Grande. It's a wall to keep out foreigners, a wall to keep out immigrants. What if we had no H-1B for somebody like Igor Sikorsky? Imagine the greatest helicopters in the world being made to Sikorsky outside of Moscow. That's what it would have been. You know, and it's current as well. I mean, 18% of all the businesses in the state are run by people who are not born here. You know, look around the rest of the country. Sergey Brin, born in Russia, you know, educated at Stanford. Google, imagine if Google was a Russian search engine, maybe, and not this. Think about Intel, started by somebody from Hungary. Look at Tesla, Elon Musk from South Africa. Even Stephen Jobs. I mean, he was born here, but his dad was born abroad. He was a Syrian. He was a Muslim. I mean, Trump never would have let him come into this country. And that's it for Stephen Jobs. This is just an insane policy that we've got going forward right now. And one of the great strengths of our state and our country are one of the best university systems in the world are right here. And you guys are all a credit to what's going on here. And we're so proud that you're here, and so proud that if you weren't lucky enough to be born in Connecticut, you came to Connecticut for this system that we've got. And rather than put up a stop sign or put out your hand and say, go home, we don't want you here, Tom Katsileas was just telling me today, we had hundreds of international students spent the last COVID spring, so to speak, in their dorm rooms at UConn because they didn't want to risk leaving Connecticut, leaving America, not sure if they'd be able to get back. And now with the president's policy, they may be saying, get out of here, go home, subject to the effects of COVID. I'll tell you, here in Connecticut, it's just the opposite. Every single one of those international students at CCSU and Trinity and UConn and all the other great schools, when you graduate, I'd like to give you a Connecticut visa attached to your diploma saying, We're proud to have you here in Connecticut. Stick around. It's a place of great opportunity. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Dean of Yale College, Marvin Chun.
It's a real honor to be here, and I come here with the privilege of being a second-generation Korean-American U.S. citizen. My father came to the States as an international student and then was naturalized as a citizen, where he served the community as a church pastor. And today I'm here as a professor of psychology at Yale, professor in the School of Medicine of Neuroscience, and as the Dean of Yale College, where I'm the first Dean of Yale College of Asian American descent. Yale University is truly grateful and supports Governor Lamont and Attorney General Chong for the lawsuit to protect our international students across the state. This lawsuit has enormous importance to over 3,000 students enrolled at Yale, international students. Our students are very anxious about the fall. All our students are in this pandemic. There's great uncertainty, there's great challenge, and we're all trying to contemplate how we can continue our education, how we can continue their education during these conditions that are unlike anything anyone has seen in their lifetimes. But Yale, together with, thanks to the governor's support, Connecticut support, we're really committed to enabling all of our students to continue their studies here in residence during this pandemic, regardless of their family income, background, or nationality. It is absolutely central to our educational mission and our role to improving lives around the world. The international students, as was mentioned, contribute to the education and training of all our students. They contribute new ideas, skills, energies, cultures to Yale, to Connecticut, and to the nation. And keeping our doors open to international students is not just good for our students, but it is good for our Connecticut. As we mentioned, it's essential for our economy, contributing hundreds of millions of dollars to the Connecticut economy alone, of which about a quarter are contributions from our international students at Yale. And also importantly, with Yale Medical School, School of Public Health, and School of Nursing, we have international students who are directly involved in medical research. They're directly working on cures and treatments for COVID-19, and they're lending their expertise not just in the labs, but also in the clinics serving our citizens of this state. And then, as you know, nationwide, 35% of new firms and 20% of billion-dollar startups have a co-founder who came to the United States as an international student. And so Connecticut should absolutely make sure that these entrepreneurs stay here in this state. Excellent, as Governor Lamont said, excellent educational institutions are what Connecticut is known around the world for. And so my colleagues and I commend the Governor and the Attorney General for moving swiftly and boldly to challenge the Department of Homeland Security's policy and to secure the flexibility and freedom that the campuses need to accommodate our precious international students during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Brian Chong is a Wesleyan undergraduate and a F1 visa holder.
Thank you so much to Attorney General Chong, Governor Lamont, and Lieutenant Governor Bicewicz for allowing me the opportunity to speak here. My name is Brian Chong. I'm a rising senior at Wesleyan University, and I'm originally from Hong Kong. This is my 6th year in Connecticut and the United States, as I went to high school for 3 years before going to Wesleyan. And in that time, I've met some truly wonderful and amazing people and families. I've really grown to love this place. I just think that I think back to my first time having breakfast at dinner time at a diner, my first time having a campfire in the backyard, and my first time going to pick apples in New England orchards during the fall. And I'm just really sad and worried that this is how all of that is going to end. On Monday, when the policy was announced, a lot of international students at Wesleyan and across the country were very worried and shocked, and rightfully so. There was just no reason to us, it seemed like, for this policy to be announced at this moment in time during a global pandemic when many students right now are suffering from food insecurity, income insecurity, and housing insecurity. both in the United States and back in their home countries. I was very, very lucky to have had some very wonderful American allies over at the Wesleyan University College Democrats who worked together with me to put out a template for calling and emailing Congress that we have been able to circulate to many other colleges over the last very short 4 days. But I'm in a very unique position as an international student who knows just a little bit of something about American politics and how change is advocated for. And I cannot imagine what this is like for international students who don't or are not studying American politics like I am. And I cannot even imagine what this is like, the kind of mental toll that this is taking for international students, unlike myself, who don't have necessarily a secure home to go back to. The many international students who see American colleges and universities as a safe haven from maybe their hometowns, maybe from income insecurity, housing insecurity, and food insecurity. I think that when we look at this policy and the effect that it has, we have to think about the margins. We have to think about those international students who are immunocompromised, those who don't have good healthcare insurance, and those who are housing insecure right now. And we have to think about what this means with regards to forcing the reopening of colleges and universities, what this means for our college towns, who are going to be experiencing an influx of a couple thousand down there at Wesleyan University and tens of thousands at bigger colleges and universities, what this means forcing colleges to bring back thousands of young people who will be moving around, who will undoubtedly pose a risk to their college town communities, their domestic communities, without giving an ample time frame for colleges and universities to figure out an appropriate infrastructure to ensure the hygiene and safety of not only their students, but the local American communities where international students take a part of. So I urge Americans across the country to please support and stand in solidarity with international students whose very real livelihoods are being impacted by this policy. Thank you very much again to Attorney General and the Governor and Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Beverly Brakeman, UAW Region 9A Director.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Governor Lamont, Attorney General Chong, Lieutenant Governor Susan Beisowitz, and all the universities that are here today. UAW represents thousands of academic workers across the country. At UConn, we have 2,000 graduate student workers and postdoctoral researchers. Hundreds of these members at UConn are F1 status and would be irreparably harmed by this policy. I'm proud to announce that UAW is joining an amicus brief today on the Harvard-MIT lawsuit. Since this order was issued, not surprisingly, we've gotten hundreds of emails from UConn graduate employee bargaining unit members. Without exception, they expressed tremendous fear, confusion, and anger at being treated like this after spending their entire academic lives contributing to the economy and infrastructure of this state and this country. Being deported means forced to return to a home they left for the chance to study abroad and work and earn an advanced degree in the United States. Being deported would create enormous financial instability and precarity. These student workers live and work here in Connecticut. They pay rent, they own homes, they own cars, they have children. They have set down roots and are invested in their communities. Many stay and make enormous contributions to their graduation. Being forced to leave would upend their lives in unimaginable ways. Most people here can't even imagine. I can't imagine. And it's an enormous loss to our state. Specific examples that we've gotten as we've been working on the amicus brief filing, we have one student worker with a serious medical condition, to what the last speaker just talked about, requiring consistent self-quarantining. Being forced to travel and leave home would literally endanger that person's life. Another student worker currently in Brazil trying to return to the U.S. has already spent $3,000 of their own money just trying to navigate getting back here in a pandemic, let alone having to deal with this now xenophobic, racist policy by this president who, by the way, ran on building a wall. So even though we shouldn't be surprised, it's still shocking. Then we had another student who works in a lab and is the only person in that lab that knows how to do run the multi-million-dollar equipment. and being deported would seriously jeopardize research and government work if they are deported. Cutting visa programs will undermine economic activity, lessen the quality of scientific research in the U.S., and believe me, these workers across our state are doing such important research on this virus to directly impact the university's finances and create dangerous incentives to hold in-person classes against public health guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Weiner of the University of Connecticut and the Vice President for Global Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Lamont and Attorney General Tong, for pursuing this important legal action in support of international students in higher education in the state of Connecticut. We're very proud of the University of Connecticut as a multicultural and global higher education institution. Our students come from more than 100 nations. They come to Connecticut to fulfill their educational dreams. They come to experience America. This ICE directive is an attack on our institutional values and targets members of the community that are a long way from home and particularly vulnerable. It will seriously disrupt students' academic progress. It will cause harm. It will cause them financial hardship. It is already causing deep emotional pain for them and their families. And it sends a signal to young people all over the world that they are not welcome in the United States. This ICE directive is mean-spirited and intended to cause harm. It is also deeply un-American. Today's legal action and the outrage in our state and throughout the country are important reminders to our international students and visiting scholars that they are deeply valued and supported. It also sends a very important message that the United States and the state of Connecticut are much stronger because of its diversity and global reach. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. I want to welcome Juston Fang, a UConn graduate student in biomedical engineering.
Thank you, Governor Lamont and Attorney General Tong and the Lieutenant Governor for giving me this opportunity. I'm here to speak about the devastating effects that ICE's new policy in regards to international students and online coursework would have on the UConn community. When devising this policy, it was clear to me that ICE has overlooked the significant contributions of the international student population at UConn. International students play an important role in the cultural diversity of UConn and contribute to all activities of all aspects of campus activities, most prominently supporting the research and teaching mission of the university. This new restrictive policy would seriously jeopardize the multicultural environment that we've worked hard to cultivate at UConn, and it raises serious threats to the health of these students in the context of COVID-19. No one wishes to see a resurgence of infections in Connecticut, and one of the most effective tools for combating the coronavirus is minimizing person-to-person contact by shifting classes online when necessary to limit spread of the virus. In the event that there is an outbreak that requires a campus shutdown and a transition to all online classes, international students would be forced to leave or be forced to travel and leave the United States, thus endangering both the student and others health-wise. It's not even known whether international flights would be available at that time. If international students were forced to leave, this would have a detrimental effect on their academic progress as students and the overall mission of the university. International students work as teaching assistants, instructing American students in lecture and discussion sections, and they'd be forced to stream their lessons from different time zones and to transmit their lessons internationally, potentially from countries with unstable, restricted, or even censored internet networks, thus degrading the quality of instruction. For international students working as research assistants, contributing to U.S. scientific advances, research progress in the lab would be negatively impacted, as not all research can be conducted effectively from a remote setting. Speaking frankly, international students are already some of the most vulnerable members of our community, and they're already disadvantaged in multiple ways. The lack of advance notice or clear rationale for this policy only creates further worry for international students about their future at UConn. Many of them have made huge investments to study here, and this policy doesn't acknowledge that. Therefore, from a public health perspective and also a compassionate humanitarian perspective, it's in UConn and Connecticut's best interests to protect international student community members by having this order rescinded. It's an unnecessarily restrictive regulation that has multiple drawbacks with no benefits whatsoever. Thank you for listening.
And Lena Eckert-Erdheim, co-president of Unite Here Local 33 and a Yale graduate student.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to take part in this important event. I'm Lena Eckert-Erdheim. I'm the co-president of Local 33 Unite Here, the Union for Graduate Workers at Yale University. I'm here with Naeem Karaçayla, who's our Vice President for Research and Contracts and an international graduate student worker from Turkey. This latest racist, xenophobic attack by the Trump administration on international students and workers is unacceptable. Even before this latest ICE directive, international student workers have faced many challenges, including complicated income and tax regulations, an ever-changing visa system, and proliferating racist travel bans. These hardships have only increased with COVID-19, and this attack is the latest hardship facing international student workers who do essential teaching and research at Yale and at other universities across Connecticut. Local 33 convened an international grad workers working group this summer, which has been meeting to discuss these unique problems and how we can organize to fight back. We are committed to continuing to fight for international graduate student workers, including undocumented members of the Yale community. And we're extremely pleased that Attorney General Tong is taking this vital step to fight back against the Trump administration. And our union will do everything we can, and we will not stop fighting until this cruel policy is rescinded and international graduate workers get the support and the respect that they deserve. And we urge elected officials and university administrations across the state to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Attorney General Tom, for any international students who it's being live streamed, I think, on all lots of platforms, who are watching maybe their loved ones, you said there's a preliminary injunction in Massachusetts tomorrow. Can you just explain maybe what the timeline could look like as people are waiting with bated breath for what their future may hold?
So, unfortunately, the timeline is very accelerated. We need to take action now because of a deadline on July 15th, which is really a drop-dead deadline for a lot of these institutions, because that's when the Trump administration is purporting to start rounding people up and deporting them. And so, again, we're talking about thousands of students and graduate students and workers who are deeply embedded in our communities, right? They're our friends and our neighbors and our family, and starting in just a few days, the president purports to go in and round them up potentially and throw them out of the country. And this touches so many of us. You know, I was reminded that my grandfather came here as an international student, and I was very fortunate to be born here in this city. But so many people are touched by this policy. And what I would say to the international students who really now have a target on their backs, like so many people in this country, we have them foremost in mind. They are right now our highest priority, and we're running into federal court tomorrow to protect them and know that the state of Connecticut is there for them.
What's your analysis of the strategy of the administration? Do you see this as simply as an effort to pressure universities to reconsider online education and reopen classes?
No, I think it's so disruptive. It goes beyond political pressure and leverage. And, you know, like so many things this administration has done with respect to foreign-born individuals, immigrants, international students, I think this is part of a larger war on immigrants and international students. And from what I can tell, with the few months they have left in office, to do as much damage as they possibly can to our immigration system.
So the preliminary injunction hearing is tomorrow.
Yep.
What happens if you lose there?
Well, first things first, we'll be in court tomorrow morning. We think we have a very strong argument based on our experience, for example, in the citizenship case. Those are very similar legal issues in terms of the rulemaking power of the federal government and how unreasonable, arbitrary, and capricious this action is. And we feel very confident about our chances tomorrow. If it doesn't go our way, we'll quickly regroup 18 states together, and we'll pursue our appellate rights or whatever action is necessary to protect this state and our colleges and universities and our students.
Is the Harvard-MIT motion being heard in the same hearing?
It's in the same court. Josh, I don't know. I think they've already had a number of hearings for Harvard-MIT. That's happening on a parallel track. Question, why are we in a separate posture? It's because those are private institutions pursuing their own legal claims, and we're acting in the names of our states and the state's interests. Similar relief.
Anybody else?
Governor,
thank you, everybody.
Can we do an off-topic question?
Yeah, maybe afterwards.
It's like new.